You are listening to MINDSHOCK True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and we are delving into the Jodi Huisentruit case. A very perplexing case of a missing news anchor. Foul play is suspected. This case has long been requested. We are finally getting to it tonight. Some new information coming out recently we have to go over again in typical MINDSHOCK fashion, with logic and reason at the forefront, attempting not to fall for any logical fallacies, unlike everything else out there. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Check the link in the description. Make sure you're subscribed, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. Could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind. Leave them in the comments section. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Welcome everybody who is listening live. Scott Hawkins, Sarah Catherine. If you're not familiar with the case, I'm going to do a quick breakdown here, maybe not so quick. We can see this is a deep dive from the wiki, and then we'll get into various news clips, new information, and logically dissecting theories unlike anything else out there. So, Jodi Huisentruit. I've heard it pronounced Huisentruit and Huisentruit. I'm going to go with Huisentruit. Born June 5th, 68th. Disappeared June 27th, 95. So not quite on her birthday, but same month. She's 27 years old at the time of disappearance in Mason City, Iowa. Iowa is a strange place, is it not? A lot of weird goings on, especially with a lot of the trafficking in Des Moines, etc. But on the other hand, seemingly far worse occurs in major cities on the coast. So, a lot of people have these preconceptions about Midwestern type areas. But I mean, statistically, it's far more dangerous in cities. So, yeah. We got to keep that in mind, of course. So, she was an American television news anchor who worked for KIMT in Mason City, Iowa. In the early morning, June 27, 95, a colleague called her at home when she failed to arrive for work. Huisentruit answered the call and said she had overslept and was on her way. Signs of a struggle outside her apartment near her car led investigators to believe she had been abducted. Despite extensive investigations, no definitive clues to her disappearance were found, and she was declared legally dead in 2001. So let's look at some of the images here of the apartment complex and see what we can make of this. I believe this is a staged reconstruction here, because I don't know if they had a crane to get this shot. So this is just to get the general idea. I'll get into the real photos in a second. So this is I believe a reconstruction from above. It does not look like it was taken at this time. But here is, so this is a real image. So you can see her vehicle. And also the items scattered about by the car, which includes a shoe. I mean, this is pretty, it's kind of obvious there was some kind of a struggle, unless some people are alleging this was all staged as a struggle. I'm not sure how many people are alleging that. But, yeah, so a lot of different items here dropped in some kind of a struggle. including her hair dryer, which is interesting, and we'll get into different theories regarding that as well. Okay, so let's continue the breakdown here. Jodi Sue Huisentruit, born June 5th, 68, raised in Long Prairie, Minnesota. Youngest daughter of Maurice Huisentruit and Imogen Jane Huisentruit. She excelled at golf in high school and won the state Class A tournament along with her team in 85 and 86. After high school, Huisentruit enrolled at Morehead State University, later transferred to St. Cloud State University, where she studied mass communications and speech communication, graduating with a bachelor's degree in 1990. Her first job after graduation was a flight attendant with Northwest Airlines. Huisentruit began her broadcasting career with CBS affiliate KGAN in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and the station's Iowa City bureau chief, then returned to Minnesota for a job at ABC affiliate KSAX in Alexandria. Huisentruit later returned to Iowa for her position at a small CBS affiliate KIMT in Mason City, with service reaching as far as southeast Minnesota. One second here. So another curiosity here is, so she transferred mid-year. So she enrolled first semester as a freshman at Morehead State University, transferred mid-year to St. Cloud. She co-anchored the campus news station, studied abroad in England. I'm not sure if that's relevant, but that is interesting. So quite the interesting life through college. Quite interesting. Very interesting indeed. And obviously, we don't know what details matter or don't matter in unsolved cases. I also couldn't find a reason for the transfer, which is curious as well. Initially, because again, we don't know what details matter or not matter. Usually, there's some kind of details of a transfer. Can't find any. Just that she moved after her first semester of freshman year. So perhaps she just thought it would be a better fit with more options. More opportunities would come of it, especially she ended up co-anchoring the news station. So, yeah, I mean, kind of hard to say it was a bad choice, seemingly a good career choice there. So, let's continue. So, disappearance. The day before her disappearance, Huisentruit participated in a golf tournament. According to Mason City resident John Van Cease, she then went to his house to view a homemade videotape of a birthday celebration that he had arranged for her earlier that month. At 4:10 a.m., Tuesday, so I mean, some people, and again, I'm going into this blind. I actually, I compiled some research of all the details. So like I've been spending quite some time on the case file, just aggregating a ton of information. But I actually never went through this, the wiki breakdown. So all the details of the case, I don't remember John Vincici. I don't know if this was... Yeah, that's actually interesting. I'm guessing most people would find that that's kind of suspicious the day before. But apparently she's fine after and talking on the phone. So 4:10 a.m. Tuesday, June 27th, 95, KIMT producer Amy Coons noticed that Huisentruit had failed to report work as scheduled and called her apartment. When Huisentruit answered the phone, she explained that she had overslept. So I'm assuming this is a landline. I mean, there were cell phones in the 90s, but I'm assuming this is a landline. She had overslept. She was preparing to leave for the station. However, by 6 a.m., Huisentruit still had not arrived, so Coons filled in for her on the morning show Daybreak At 7:13 a.m., KIMT staff called the Mason City Police. When police, and you know what's curious, so the police arrived right away or same day, instead of saying, oh, she's got to be missing for 24 hours, etc., etc. So that is interesting, compared to other cases. When police arrived at Huisentruit's apartment, they found a red Mazda Miata in the parking lot that she was planning on buying. As well, we mean planning on buying, so it was a lease-to-own situation. As well as evidence that suggested a struggle that had taken place near the car. Her personal items, including a bent car key and her red high heels, were strewn about the area, and police reported recovering an unidentified palm print from the pole nearby. So the pole nearby, again, that doesn't necessarily mean... I'm assuming that's what's going on in this image, because that's the only pole that's super close to the vehicle. But notice it's not right next to the vehicle, so presumably, theoretically, that palm print is not necessarily one belonging to the perp. But obviously cannot exclude that either. Investigation, and there's been a lot of criticism about the investigation, but let's go one step at a time here. Investigators interviewed at least 3 neighbors at Huisentruit's apartment complex who said they heard screams around the time she would have been likely leaving for work. In addition, a nearby neighbor reported seeing a white 40 Econoline idling in the parking lot at about the same time. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, as cliched as all of this is, I mean, these white vans... again, this isn't a photo of the one that was idling, but presumably this is pretty much close to what it is that was released, kind of like in the Springfield 3 case when they released the vehicle. They got a vehicle similar to it. So this is supposedly matching the description of the witness that said that this vehicle was idling in the parking lot at the time. Let's get a little bit of a horizontal look at this thing. I don't know why this image was so skewed, but yeah. So again, quite cliche for true crime to have this kind of vehicle spotted. So obviously people, is this targeted abduction, random abduction? We'll be getting into all of that. So, September 95, Huisentruit family hired PIs from McCarthy and Associates Investigative Services in Minneapolis, who in turn enlisted the assistance of Omaha private investigator Doug Jassa. McCarthy and Jassa appeared on several national television shows, including America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries. In November 95, they and members of Huisentruit's family traveled to L.A. to meet with 3 prominent psychics. And for all the goofs and coincidence, there is hallucinating psychics don't solve cases. I did a 3-part multi-hour series on documented cases where police actually enlisted the help of psychics, and the psychics actually solved and closed these cases, a whole assortment of different types of cases. So again, that doesn't necessarily mean they have psychic powers, but they are solving cases the police cannot solve. So, and of course, there's obviously plenty of fake psychics that prey on desperate family members. But again, plenty of psychics who actually solve cases also. The meeting was televised, served as the pilot for the Psychic Detectives television show. Although each show generated several leads, none resulted in concrete evidence nor ID of a suspect. In May 96, approximately 100 volunteers searched an area of Cerro Gordo County and left flags to mark anything that appeared suspicious. Each of these sites was then re-examined by law enforcement, but no promising evidence was located. Police and PIs have conducted more than 1,000 interviews but none have resulted in conclusive evidence pointing to a suspect. Huisentruit was declared legally dead in May 2001. Since 2000, in 2003, FindJodi.com was created by Minnesota television journalists Josh Benson and Gary Peterson with the goal to keep the case in the spotlight and for the website to serve as a clearinghouse for tips that might lead to Huisentruit. When new cases arise that appear to bear similarities with Huisentruit's or whoever's remains are discovered in the area, speculation quickly leads to a connection with the missing reporter. However, no suspect has been ID'd, and all uncovered remains to date have been proven to be from other sources. In 2005, many media outlets, including 2020, again focused on the story as the 10th anniversary of Huisentruit's disappearance approach. In early 2008, photocopies of the 84 pages of Huisentruit's personal journal were anonymously emailed to a local newspaper. The Mason City Globe-Gazette received the material in a large envelope with no return address and a June 4th postmark from Waterloo, Iowa. June 4th postmark? So are they... Interesting. So her birthday is June 5th. Disappearance June 27th. This is postmarked June 4th. The original journal has been in the possession of law enforcement since the investigation began. Within days, the Mason City Police Department reported that the sender had come forward and was ID'd as Cheryl Ellingson, the wife of former MCPD Chief David Ellingson. The MCPD gave no motive for why David Ellingson had taken a copy of evidence home when he left office, and no motive as to why Cheryl Ellingson interfered in the investigation by sending it to the newspaper. That is a curiosity. This is definitely a huge curiosity in this case. May 2015, all 100 members of the Iowa House of Representatives signed a letter requesting Mason City to declare June 27, 2015 as Jodi Huisentruit Day in honor of her memory and at all victims in unsolved cases. This was ultimately declined. In a December 2016 opinion piece for the Northwest Iowa Reviews, retiring state representative John Kuiker, is it Kuiker or Kuiker, of Sioux County, described his experience with the case as a member of the Iowa State House Public Safety Committee and suggested a cover-up by Mason City officials. So the plot thickens here. So a retiring state rep is saying that there's a cover-up by officials. I mean, this is really curious. Obviously, as a reporter, you'd want to know what kind of cases she was looking into for sure. That would be number one. In March 2017, a search warrant was executed against a person of interest named John Van Cease, seeking GPS data of two of his vehicles. In 2018, 48 Hours aired an episode on Huisentruit's disappearance featuring Van Cease in never-before-seen footage. The reason was never explained by authorities, and the fact that Van Cease has even been looked at was not revealed until leaked in 2018. Van Cease, who was never charged for any aspect of the disappearance, died December 2024. So this is the guy whose house she was at the day prior. Now, if in fact he had a van, rented this white van, or knew somebody with a white van and orchestrated this whole thing either himself or with his buddies, why would a state rep allege there was a mass cover-up of it? As of 2020, the MCPD and the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation were still actively investigating Huisentruit's disappearance. That same year, FindJodi.com launched a podcast by the same name in order to gain a new audience to share information on the case and generate new leads. In 2022, ABC's 2020 debuted a new special titled Gone at Dawn, overviewing the disappearance and interviewing those close with the case. The episode was the third time 2020 featured the Huisentruit case. In February 2023, former media consultant turned PI Steve Ridge, who started investigating the case in 2019, announced that he was personally offering $25,000 equivalent to $26,400 in 2025. Interesting side note by Wiki there for just a 2-year difference. Reward for info that leads to the recovery of Huisentruit's remains, even if an arrest is never made. Now that's curious wording, right? Because usually it's for an arrest. In September 2023, he increased the reward to $50,000. In December 2025, the reward was doubled to $100,000, effective through June 27, 2026, 31 years after she went missing. So he's ceasing. So that from December 2025, the reward is only offered through June 27, 2026, which has passed, unfortunately. And yeah, that's really curious. The dates, the terms, quite curious here. In early October 2024, a year after offering a reward for info leading to Huisentruit's body, PI Ridge reported that Jodi had a new boyfriend immediately before her disappearance. The couple had been in contact daily or nearly daily since they began dating 10 days or so before the abduction. Ridge believed this new boyfriend may have created jealousy and led to Jodi's abduction. Curious, but why would there be a mass cover-up? Why would there be a mass cover-up? That question still remains. In July 15, 2025, Hulu released the 3-part documentary series, her last broadcast, The Abduction of Jodi Huisentruit. While the series dispels many rumors and erroneous media reports about the case, it chooses to focus attention on 4 persons of interest, none of whom the MCPD have found evidence against, none of them having ever been elevated to the status of suspects despite 30 years of police work, including serial rapist Tony Jackson, who lived 2 blocks from the KIMT broadcast studios at the time, Brad Millerburn, the ex-husband of Huisentruit's childhood best friend, revealing that the wooden site searched in Winstead, Minnesota in October 2024 was adjacent to a house that Millerburn had previously owned, and suspected serial killer Christopher Ravach, whose girlfriend lived in Mason City at the time. Man, that's a lot of connections here. The series also included an admission from the officer who had requested the warrant in 2017 to place GPS trackers on the vehicles of the first person of interest, John Van Cease, explaining that he had invited Van Cease in for an interview and as an investigative technique, had hoped that the trackers might have shown a spooked Van Cease if he was the abductor. Going to a possible burial site, no such evidence resulted, reiterating that Van Cease has never became a suspect and was never charged. On November 20th, I would assume all of these individuals had their vehicle registrations and known friends and associates and family members' vehicle registrations searched to see if there was a connection to this white van. November 20th, 2025, Mason City Police were again summoned to Winstead, Minnesota to continue their investigation, not to follow up on an additional tip as was previously reported. A house that was an area of interest and not available during a previous search was demolished, prompting police to check into the area. Mason City Police Investigator Sergeant Terrence Prochaska released the following statement, quote, on November 20th, 2025, Mason City Police conducted a search of a property in Winstead, Minnesota as part of the continued investigation into the disappearance of Jodi Huisentruit. This was not a result of a new tip in the investigation. Investigators checked an area where residents had been recently demolished that was not accessible during a previous visit. A canine was used as part of the search. Nothing of significance was located. This is an open investigation. MCPD has no further comment at this time. Sergeant Terrence Prochaska, MCPD. Interesting. Huh. Anybody have any thoughts thus far on the Jodi Huisentruit case? So, what pops out at me immediately is, of course, the guy that she was with the day before showing her the video of her birthday party. How close were they? Were they friends or just mere acquaintances? This guy filmed her birthday party. She really wanted to see it. He couldn't give her a copy of the VHS, like she had to go to his home to view it? Is that because they were friends? Or, like, why wouldn't he just give her a copy? She was also at that golf tournament the day before, so a lot of people could have seen her. Let's look into this recent. So this is Fox 9, and this just was uploaded on YouTube June 4th, 2026.
3 weeks.
So fair use. Let's look at this segment.
From now, it's the 27th of June. We will hit the 31st anniversary of the disappearance of Jodi Huisentruit outside her apartment in Mason City, Iowa, as she was on her way to work. She was a morning and noon anchor at KIMT TV in Mason City. I was actually working at the station out of Austin at the very same time that she was working in Mason City. I think I was in Austin, then over in Rochester, but for KAL, while she worked at KIMT, I would see her on the air every day before I went to work. I remember the last time I'd only met her once, and it was at the media softball tournament in 1994 before I left for a different job down in Des Moines. Well, the last couple of days, we've heard about some new information from a private investigator into this case who said there was a witness that came forward to him with a tip that he believes may now resolve this case. That private investigator, Steve Ridge, joining me now. Appreciate the time, Steve. You've been looking into this case. I know you said 7 years that you've been looking into this. Before we get into the new information that you've shared with the Department of Criminal Investigation, I want to talk about your background. How did you come to be involved in this 7 years ago?
Well, the company that I was with before I became a private investigator was actually the dominant local media research and consulting firm in the nation. And I was with them for 37 years. And during the course of Jodi's career, she sent a audition tape to me. Actually, it was, she had first worked in Cedar Rapids at the old WMT, which is now KJAM, same station I worked at for a period of time. And then she went up to Alexandria and worked there. And then she sent an audition tape to me looking for work. And our client was KIMT at the time.
So you know what else is kind of interesting? A guy who knows her and was in her business and helped her get a job is the guy that ended up being a PI trying to solve the case. I mean, that's a little unusual. Whenever I see anything unusual for a case, I kind of look at that. Now, obviously, if he was deeply affected by her going missing and he really wants to help get the case solved and the police are being incompetent and not solving it, unfortunately, as is usually the case with murders and missing persons, yeah, I mean, you got to applaud this guy unless there's something else weird going on.
Also, we had coaches that worked with her, on-air coaches that worked with her delivery and try to eliminate some of that Minnesotan accent that to make her, you know, a better fit for a national stage eventually or whatever. And so that's how I actually had a personal connection. But I will tell you, to my knowledge, I never met her. I have been told that apparently I spoke in an event where she was there. So we all kind of live in this little small world. I had checked you out and knew that you had worked in the market and overlapped. So it's a very sad story, and it's been a grueling 7 years, but I think I've made really substantial progress.
Yeah, I remember that day when she went missing too. And again, I was working down in Des Moines, and a coworker who I work with now, who's our chief photographer here, John Catu, he and I worked together in Austin, and then we both worked together in Des Moines. And I remember the day he came to me and said, "Hey, Jodi Huisentruit is missing," and I still remember that very clearly. So you have been involved in this, and tell me how much time and money you've invested now in the past 7 years to really dive into trying to come up with some answers.
Well, I've dedicated close to full time on the case, at least starting 7 years ago. Now, more recently, I've ended up involved in some major cases down in Missouri and Kansas, and one in Pennsylvania. So I've brought on extra people to assist me, but I decided to make it kind of my mission to try to solve this case personally, to really, nail it to the ground, hopefully. And to that end, I did put up $100,000 reward that would come out of my personal funds, because that's how strongly I feel. I mean, I want this resolved, and I want to be able to find her remains and give her a proper burial and bring closure to the family. And that's my primary goal. But I'll do, a lot of these releases and things that I do, or advances that I've made, they build on one another. And when people see or hear things that I report, they think, well, gosh, I've been sitting on this, maybe I'll be in touch. And that's exactly what happened with this woman who's now in her 80s, who came forward with some critical information in the case.
When did this happen?
Well, I've been talking with her for over a year, but I've also been researching it, and I have secured from her photographs with the individual that we're talking about.
You know what's weird though? If she was really dating, so she's been dating somebody for 10 days, and there's the photographs just of the guy and not the guy with her. But how did nobody know about this? So was it something she was keeping secret, and why? A lot of questions there.
And written communication, handwritten communication, ticket stubs, financial checks, you name it. I mean, I have completely validated the fact that she dated the person that I'm talking about here, and that in a heated moment of anger and frustration, when they were being tailed by authorities, that this gentleman slammed the steering wheel several times, saying, "I didn't do it, I didn't do it." But the final time, he slammed it extra hard, and he said, "I did it." And when he said, "I did it," they both froze momentarily. They looked at one another. They didn't speak for a while. And then eventually the relationship broke up. And I think probably largely because of that. He broke it off. He said, "My life is too much of a mess. I've got too much going on. I just can't be in a relationship. It's not fair to you."
So immediately what jumps out here, so is this guy not like a pure evil scumbag? So, because presumably, if this is a known criminal with multiple offenses, possibly multiple murders or whatever, if he accidentally revealed something to another girlfriend, wouldn't he kill her? I mean, possibly. Or disappear, move away, to continue the relationship as normal, and then he's the one who breaks it off? I mean, again, we don't know, really don't have a lot of details other than what this PI is saying. But presumably this woman came forward all these years later and says that this man that she was involved with was dating Jodi 10 days prior to her disappearance. And he presumably admitted, apparently, he was being tailed by authorities. The context is not given here. Was this not in connection to the Jodi case, or were they also following all these people in the Jodi case? So real quick, I didn't have this map up before, so here is a map of all of these locations of interest here, where apparently, so this is the apartments, and there's a few different search sites, and so Van Cees was here, living close by to the station. She's living very close to the station. Apparently there's 2 JV residences over the years, and then also Tony Jackson, several sites associated with Jackson. Then you have this other location in Winstead, Minnesota, connected to her childhood best friend. Now that's kind of a new one. You don't really see that often in true crime cases. Alright, hold on. What's going on here? Okay. Wow, it is not loading. That is strange. Alright, give me another second here. Why is this not working? Let me try this again. Okay, here you go. And so here's the distance between Mason City and Winstead, Minnesota. And there's St. Cloud as well in Minnesota. So not that short of a trip, but, you know, obviously in true crime cases, bodies are transferred longer than this distance as well, 171 miles approximately. So apparently there were tips, warrants, and property excavations here, presumably connected to her childhood best friend. But we don't really know. Let's continue here.
And she's extremely credible. I mean, she sat on this for a long time, but she said, I just feel a moral obligation to come forward and share it with you. And frankly, she was concerned about going to authorities. I mean, she just didn't have very much confidence that local authorities were going to do anything with the information.
And so, again, this is a woman, you say, in her 80s, who said dated a person of interest. How long after Jodi's disappearance was she in a relationship with him?
Less than 6 months. It was very soon in the overall scheme. And so it was still very fresh, and the police were still actively investigating and following up on leads and following people. They followed multiple people, at the time. And so that's essentially what happened. And, I'm absolutely convinced that it's true testimony.
And again, you said that she provided some of these other documentation, and that's to prove her story that she was in a relationship with this person of interest, right?
That's correct. Yeah, absolutely. And I think without a doubt, she would submit to a polygraph test, to a lie detector test. I think she would testify. I think she would certify an affidavit. I mean, I think she's ready to cooperate, but she is getting older, and that's part of my concern is, we've lost too many witnesses in this case that passed away or moved away or what have you, and I just don't want that to happen.
And she believes that this moment of confession that she describes is legitimate.
Absolutely. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, we talked at length about all the things that they went to do as a couple and where they went and the time they spent and how close they were in this romantic relationship. And she would have absolutely no reason to want to, lie or mislead or whatever. There's nothing like that in this relationship of hers.
You mentioned that she was hesitant to go to authorities. Now, again, we're approaching 31 years. That's a long time to be hesitant to go to authorities. Did she have any other explanation for why she's held this for so many years?
Well, I think that, first of all, I think her relationship with this individual sort of tainted her view of local authorities. And, I don't know what, if any, personal experience she had, but, there were a lot of missteps from day one in this case. The car was not ever searched inside, it was only processed on the outside.
I mean, that's kind of insane, isn't it? I mean, this is the 90s, not the 60s, but presumably even in the 60s they would have searched and tested everything inside the vehicle, right? What? I mean, this is kind of crazy. I mean, did they really think she never entered the vehicle? I mean, maybe she did, maybe she didn't, but that's kind of a weird thing to not even... Yeah, that's crazy. This is the mid-90s.
Because it was locked. It was given back to the family and it was sold. So any potential evidence there was gone. Later, there were other issues with evidence of her diary, which a copy of which was essentially stolen and given to the local newspaper. The overall confidence level in the Mason City Police Department is just not very high among the citizens of the community as it relates to the Jodi Huisentruit case.
No, the Division of Criminal Investigation in Iowa has been involved in this investigation, though, since the beginning, the state investigative agency. I know you said you have forwarded this information to them. She could have gone directly to them and not used the local police department, but did you get the sense that she was concerned about them, or just sort of unaware of that route to take?
I think largely unaware of that. I mean, I told her when I talked to her, I said, look, I've got a great relationship with the FBI. I worked on multiple cases with them. I've got a good relationship with the Division of Criminal Investigation. I said, I've got the avenues. So I think at this point she will cooperate, but she wanted me to be the facilitator to make that happen. And I'm happy to do that because, if people will come forward with information, I encourage them to go to the police, but if they don't and they want to talk to me first, I'm more than happy to facilitate that communication.
Now, you are not publicly naming who this person of interest is that she has, said she heard a confession from at this point. Is this a person of interest who is still living?
Well, I can't comment on whether alive or whether they're dead. I will tell you it's a male, and that's as far as I really want to go.
That's kind of weird. I don't think I've ever seen another case where they wouldn't even comment on whether the person was alive or not. That's pretty weird. So this woman is in her 80s. So again, we don't know if this other individual would have been older than her or not. I mean, again, statistically, women usually date men that are older than them. Statistically, that doesn't mean that's what happened here. Also, he could have been exactly the same age, but that would still, he would be beyond the average male life expectancy if that were the case. Or, again, not beyond the realm of possibility, she could have been dating somebody younger. Maybe not a lot younger. But this is kind of weird. Again, somewhat of an outlier. I don't know if I've ever seen a case where they wouldn't even mention whether the individual was alive or not.
And that's just because I'm not trying to be coy. I mean, you really are innocent until proven guilty. Mm-hmm. And I think that any clues that I might give would be inappropriate.
Yeah, you get.
Well, obviously innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, but why would you not be able to say whether they're alive or not? You're not giving their name, so what? That's just kind of weird.
To be very careful, but you've supplied all this information to investigators in the state of Iowa. Where do you get the sense now that it is at? Are they acting on this? Have you get any indication how seriously they're looking into it?
Well, I have utmost confidence in the new special agent assigned to this case, a gentleman by the name of Ryan Herman, who is a special agent in charge of the case. I'm just very confident in his credibility and background and ability to work with me and with witnesses. But the other thing that I am doing at this juncture is calling on the local Mason City Police Department to request that the new Iowa Attorney General's cold case unit, which was established a couple of years ago, be brought in on the case, because it's a wonderful resource. They have the prosecutorial firepower. It's a wonderful group. I know them well. And I think if they were brought in addition to the DCI, I think this could be solved. Now, the only way that happens is if the local department, Mason City Police Department, owns this case. They have jurisdiction, primary jurisdiction. They decide whether to call in the DCI, the FBI, the cold case unit, and so far they have not asked the cold case unit to come in.
Okay, but in closing here, it sounds like you have pretty high confidence that this could come to a resolution.
Well, I do, because this is not the only piece of information I have. I mean, this is the centerpiece, I would say, because when you get someone that's prepared to testify to having heard a confession, that's pretty good evidence for even a circumstantial case. But I have a mountain of other evidence that I have compiled that does point to this individual, and I think the collective information that I have could conceivably be used in a no-body prosecution, if you will, a circumstantial evidence case. And I think that there are people beyond this individual who have knowledge of what happened and have helped in the cover-up.
All right. Private Investigator Steve Ridge, thank you for taking time with us today. We'll be very interested to see where this information that you have come across, that has come to you, that you have passed on, where this leads.
Well, I sure appreciate you giving this attention. It's lengthier discussion like this is much more valuable in a quick minute 30 package on local TV.
I agree, totally. Thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
So the Huisentruit family, again, has verified and made statements that they did not hire him, and that, apparently his statements have not been verified, etc., regarding this other individual. Make of that what you will. So what is curious, so there's a book on this case by Beth Bednar, Dead Air, The Disappearance of Jodi Huisentruit. And there are some interesting claims made in this book. So, some of the most interesting are that John Van Cease fixated on Jodi as soon as he moved into her apartment building and asked her neighbor who she was. He then later seen watching her apartment from his car in the parking lot after he moved out. So he lived in her apartment complex, then he moved to a different one, and then she went to his home. Huh. The day before, which is curious, is it not? So this is Van Cease And there were also reports that he had Alzheimer's later in life. He is no longer alive. But this individual supposedly lived at her apartment complex, then moved elsewhere, but she was at his home the day before. That's kind of weird. So his first statement in 24 years was an announcement that he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. John Van Cees and his wife Jane released their statement through Steve Ridge, who is the chief operating officer of the Magid Media Consulting Group based in Cedar Rapids. Ridge says they asked him to disclose that Van Cees has recently been diagnosed with moderate and advancing Alzheimer's. A search warrant was executed against Van Cees more than 2 years ago, but the contents of that warrant remain sealed. Van Cees numerous times denied any involvement. Wow, that's curious. So this media release was April 17th, 2019. So this search warrant was more than 2 years ago, so it would have been in around 2016-ish, if it was approximately more than 2 years. Curious, but in this book, this is what is alleged. Van Cees was fixated on Jodi as soon as he moved into her apartment building, asked her neighbor who she was, then was seen watching her apartment from his car in the parking lot after he had moved out. So he had been stalking her. I mean, that's kind of weird. Just a quick aside here. Let's go to an interview with Amy Coons. This is on findjodi.com. Perhaps there's something relevant here. We'll get back to Van Cees in a second here. So this is Amy Coons. And so this is on findjodi.com, interview with Amy Coons. Amy Coons was a producer for KIMT TV's Daybreak Morning Show, Mason City, Iowa, when morning actor Jodi Huisentruit disappeared. Amy called Jodi when she failed to show up to work on the morning of June 27th, 95. To this day, Amy remains to be the last person to talk to Jodi before she disappeared from the parking lot of her residence at the Key Apartments. Amy answered several of FindJodi.com's questions regarding the day Jodi disappeared, the current investigation, and instances surrounding the case. So, and this was posted 15 years ago. If that is accurate, no actual date, just says here, acquaintances, the Huisentruit file, 15 years ago. I don't know if it was done earlier and it was only posted 15 years ago. But that'd be approximately 2011 that it was posted. Doesn't say here when conducted, but possibly around the same time or earlier. So another curiosity here, how do they know that Amy Coons actually spoke to Jodi? So some people theorize that something was going on at the station, and there could have potentially been people involved, co-workers, drug dealer associates with co-workers, etc. Something stemming in some capacity from the station that she worked at. In which case, they allege Amy Coons might not be entirely forthcoming, not necessarily that she was responsible, but perhaps if she knows who was, and there's a cover-up. Also kind of strange that a government official, that representative that says that this is a whole cover-up. Welcome the Ant 1. This is one of the cases that stick with you, like the Springfield 3, Cindy James, Ketty Cabot, and even Dorothy Jane Scott. I have series on the Springfield 3 and the Ketty Cabin case. I do not have podcast series on the other two. Perhaps I should look into those. But yeah, this one is quickly stacking up to be a very disturbing case for a few different reasons. But if there is something connected to the station, I mean, that would just make it that much more creepier. But let's look at some of these answers here. And again, I'm not alleging anything is true or untrue. This is, of course, MINDSHOCK, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. After 16 years, okay, well, that gives us a clue then on when this was conducted. So this would have been conducted in 2011. After 16 years, are you surprised this case is still unsolved? What surprises you the most? Yes, I am surprised this case is still unsolved. I'm most surprised that the person responsible has not slipped up and talked about or bragged about what he did, unless he did, and that was reported by Ridge recently in the past year. But again, this was conducted in 2011. How often do you think of this case? Have you been able to move on from it, or is it a constant struggle? I had to let it go and move on. I had a private memorial service for Jodi at the river behind her apartment building, which, by the way, was searched. That was searched. I let 3 roses go in the water, 1 for the past, 1 for the present, and 1 for the future. Wow, that's actually pretty touching. The future being important, vowing to hold out hope that the case will be solved. I also wrote Jodi a letter. I ripped it up and let that go in the water as well. Interesting that she ripped it up. Is that common? Because again, those that believe that she either knows what happened or possibly responsible or partially responsible, she wouldn't want anybody reading the letter. On the other hand, if it's simply private, but wouldn't the water destroy it anyway? I don't know. Question, regarding the morning you called Jodi, walk us through exactly when you knew she was not in, what time you called her, and what she said on the phone. Again, I would presume that they verified this with the phone records, including the time on the phone, but that still, does that prove, unless somebody else overheard the call, or we get the Echelon spy satellite system that's been recording all the calls for many decades. Again, if you haven't seen Enemy of the State with Will Smith, check that out for the goofs that hallucinate. The NSA has not been doing that. Is there a way to prove she actually spoke to Jodi, or did everybody just take this on blind faith? Again, I am not claiming anything is true or untrue or that she is lying, but this is MINDSHOCK. We're not going to fall for logical fallacies here. I don't remember what time I called her. So this is weird. This is 2011 and they didn't check the record. You would think they would have checked the records, right? I mean, you would think the police would have talked to her. She doesn't even know the time? Okay, this is a little weird. I think it was 4:10 a.m. Okay, so that's kind of strange to phrase it that way. I don't remember what time I called her. I think it was 4:10 a.m. Why would you not say, I don't remember exactly, but it was around 4:10? Because there's like a period here. I don't remember what time I called her, period. Presumably there's a pause there. I think it was 4:10 a.m. That's kind of specific too. It's not around 4, not around 4:15, 4:10. If I remember right. Please check the police report for the exact time. Okay. It's been so long I don't remember. I called her twice. I talked to her and woke her up that first time. The second time it just rang and rang. I don't remember the times. I had obviously woken her up. She asked what time it was. I told her. She said she'd be right in. And again, is there any way to prove this? I've brought up brain fingerprint scans before. I mean, it's literally bypasses the intention to lie or not. It simply recognizes the brain waves on whether or not a statement registers any kind of recognition in the brain. And supposedly nobody's beat it. This is what Stephen Avery agreed and subjected himself to this test in Making a Murderer. And again, there was no recognition of the state's case. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't kill Teresa Hallback. It just means that the entire state's case is bonk. And if he did kill her, it was not in the manner alleged because of none of that registered. And so it doesn't matter whether somebody's trying to lie or not. The brain waves are going to show whether that information is familiar or not. So again, in my opinion, the way to solve a lot of these cases, I'm going to do a dedicated episode on the brain fingerprint scan technology, is to just brain fingerprint scan everybody associated with the case, right? Because then you could figure out things. Because sometimes people lie, but not because they're responsible for what happened, but they're involved in other illegal activity. For example, if there was some kind of drug situation at the station and Jodi was involved and these other people were involved, they're not going to admit that. So they might be lying about a whole bunch of stuff, but even if they didn't harm her in any way. But a brain fingerprint scan would at least set the record straight with certain things. Question, when did Jodi's shift start and end? It's 3 a.m. to 12:30 or 1 p.m. Did she have a cell phone back then? If she had a cell phone, I didn't have the number. So she's basically verifying here that she was calling the landline at the apartment. At what time did you know something was wrong, and why did you wait to call the police? I knew something was wrong at about 6 a.m. I didn't call the police. I had the next person who came into work call the police. I waited because I thought she had just fallen back asleep. At the very worst, maybe she fell and hit her head in the shower. And honestly, I was busy doing the work for two people. That's a weird thing to say. Is that the go-to? Like, yeah, maybe fall back asleep. Maybe got into a car accident, right? And if she doesn't have a cell phone, she can't call the station and she's got to stay with the car, presumably for a certain period of time. Why would you immediately go to fell in the shower and hit her head? She could be dying. What, if you really thought that was a possibility, how could you not call the police, emergency medical services? That's a crazy thing to say. Am I the only one in thinking that's weird? That's her go-to? That's her go-to for not calling emergency services, police? Like, what? This interview is actually going to get a little weirder in a moment. This is why I'm going over this. One of the theories by, again, these online sleuths, we go over many theories. This is MINDSHOCK. We leave no stone unturned in any of these cases in our logical pursuit for truth. If there is a connection to the station, would people say certain things? I've never heard somebody that's their go-to. Now, if somebody's super groggy and they woke up and you woke them up, yeah, presumably falling back asleep might be a good theory. But if they've never done that before and they've never missed work before, who knows? But hit her head in the fell and hit her head? That's why she didn't call the police? Does anybody find that strange? So she could be bleeding out, she could be brain hemorrhaging and dying, and this woman didn't call the police, even thinking that's what she was thinking on why she didn't show up? Like, car accident, presumably you wouldn't need to call, right? If it happens on a, middle of the road, there's other people there, she may or may not be hurt, but even if she's hurt, police are already on their way, nothing you can do, and, there's no evidence there's a car accident, but fell and hit her head in the shower? And nobody else, like, who else would check up on her? That's weird. Do you think Jodi was alone in her apartment that morning? Yes, I believe she was alone. Also a weird thing to say. Why? I mean, I guess you could say, well, she hasn't been known to bring anybody back to her apartment. But how would she really know for sure? Maybe she had a female friend stay over. I mean, how would she know, though? This is, her work associate, not her best friend. Interesting, weird thing to say. Question, police say Jodi went to them about being stalked and a white truck was mentioned. Did you ever know about somebody stalking her? Did she ever tell you? She mentioned she thought she was followed once while she was rollerblading. Shout out to rollerbladers everywhere. Rollerblading is awesome. Shout out Roller Jam. Rollerblading did not die in the 80s. Didn't even die in the 90s. If you haven't checked out our podcast on rollerblading, I actually got to do a clip on that. On rollerblading, still alive into the early 2000s and beyond. But, yeah. So that was curious because, she shared this with her work associate. It never happened again. Well, how would she know so she didn't say when this happened. She wasn't that worried about it. It just creeped her out. This is the first I've heard mention of white truck. That's kind of weird. So she wasn't worried about it, but it creeped her out. Is anybody getting some really weird vibes from this interview? A lot of what she's saying doesn't really make a lot of sense. It seems like there's a whole lot of assumptions about a lot of things here that it creeped her out. Like, if she was creeped out, so she's not worried but creeped. How are you super creeped out about something and not worried about it? It's a little weird. And how would she know whether it happened again or not? Because she may not have mentioned it to her. But she did mention she thought she was followed once while she was rolled. But interesting phrasing, too. Not she mentioned she was being followed. She mentioned she thought she was being followed once while she was rollerblading. So that's interesting phrasing. Now, obviously, we don't know what Jodi told her. Whether Jodi was convinced that she was being followed. Like, why would you be creeped out if you weren't really that sure? I mean, I don't know. Whereas if you were sure you were being followed, of course you'd be creeped out. But then why would you not be worried about it if you're that sure and creeped out? Yeah, this is a weird interview. Did Jodi confide in you about personal things, or did you just have a business relationship? She did not confide in me. It was mostly a business relationship. So she wouldn't have known if it happened again, right? Because she wouldn't necessarily be expected to tell her. The night before, did you attend the golf event? If so, what do you remember of it? I did not attend the golf event. Did you attend John Van Ceese's party he threw for Jodi's birthday? If so, what do you remember? Anything out of the ordinary? I did not attend Van Ceese's party. I wasn't even invited. That's interesting phrasing, too. I wasn't even inviting. Not I wasn't invited, just to clarify factually. I wasn't even invited. Almost like there's some kind of resentment there, possibly. Again, maybe not, because we don't have a video of this interview. Again, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. It's just some of the phrasing here is weird. How soon were you interviewed by the police? Did they give you a lie detector test? Were there any questions asked that were out of the ordinary you can remember? I was interviewed at police the day Jodi disappeared. I was interviewed by the FBI a couple days later. I've been told not to talk about the interview. I was not given a lie detector test. So she was told not to talk about the interview. Which interview? She was told not to talk about the police interview or the FBI or both. But she doesn't say I was told not to talk about the interviews. But the most recent mention was the FBI a couple days later that she volunteered because they asked her about the police, again, presumably local police. She volunteered the info that she was interviewed by the FBI a couple days later. I've been told not to talk about the interview, presumably not to talk about the FBI interview, as that was the most recently mentioned here in this wording. That's curious. So if the FBI was doing a thorough investigation, one would have to believe they were asking about people at her work. Because again, just basic stats, when a woman is harmed or met with foul play, it's usually a male known to her. And even if it's not a male known to her, it would be a female known to her. Stranger crime is the rarest form. So one would have to think if the investigation was thorough, the FBI were looking at everybody at a workplace, including females at the workplace. What was the mood in the newsroom the week after it disappeared? Did anyone suspect co-workers having involvement? The mood was very somber. No one ever is capitalized here. All capitals. No one ever suspected co-workers' involvement. Curious on that emphasis, isn't it? This is a very interesting interview, isn't it? Almost as if she's overcompensating for that, because she could have just said no. She could have said the mood was very somber, and no one ever suspected coworkers. It's like she emphasized the ever, similar to the way she said I wasn't even invited to the birthday party. Not I wasn't invited. I wasn't even invited. As if there's some kind of resentment or narrative steering going on here. Do you think drugs were involved in the case? Jodi had been really up and down before her disappearance. So there's not a yes or a no here. Do you think drugs were involved? Jodi had been really up and down before her disappearance. She would fall asleep in edit bays and later in the day be really perky. I wondered what was going on with her. I would not be surprised if drugs were involved. So this is interesting. So she's being relatively forthcoming. Now, if there were some kind of a drug connection or a work connection led to her being abducted, would she volunteer this info? Now, if the FBI already knew all of this, then yes. If nobody knew any of this and she was involved or knew who people were involved, Amy Coons, if Amy knew who was involved or was involved herself, would she ever volunteer this if nobody knew about it? So presumably even if she's involved, she would only volunteer it if it was already known, because it would be more suspicious to not volunteer it. Possibly. Again, we're just trying to cover all of the angles here. Did Jodi butt heads with anyone at the station? What was her working demeanor? Was she always polite or frustrated, irritated, happy, and patient? I was Jodi's assistant. She was very demanding. She would often snap at me. Then she would turn around and clap, stand up at her desk and proclaim, "I love life." I could never figure her out. This is a weird thing to say about a potentially deceased individual. This is a weird thing to say about a victim of a crime, isn't it? Now, she was very demanding. That's not that. But would the average person have a little bit more tact than saying she would often snap at me? I don't know. We don't know Amy's personality either, but that does jump out at me as a little bit strange to say about a victim. Then she would turn around and clap, stand up on her desk and proclaim, "I love life." I could never figure her out. Like, just saying I could never really figure her out. You know, she was a little uneven at times. Like, that would be a little bit more tactful way to phrase that, but I don't know. Anybody else think this is a very strange interview? This seems quite a strange interview with some reveals here. Did Jodi hang out with work people or have an outside group of friends? Jodi was friends with our coworker, I don't know, it's a typo, Robin Wolfram. Robin was the main evening anchor at the time. Other than that, Jodi had an outside group of friends. So she's saying that she was good friends, not just acquaintances, good friends with Robin Wolfram. And some people believe Wolfram was involved. You've said in the past that you have a hunch on who could have been responsible. Do your friends or coworkers share the same hunch? She says, I do believe my former coworkers share the same hunch. She doesn't say who this is. Let me see if I can track this down. How do you think MCPD is handling the case? 1 to 10, can they do more? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give them a 1. Wow. I don't know. Maybe if she's just that blunt of a person, maybe this isn't that suspicious. But, I mean, it is weird. It's definitely weird either way. I definitely think they could be doing more. The interview where Ron Van de Weerd is shown dusting off the case file speaks volumes. What do you think needs to happen to solve this case? I think the person responsible needs to slip up and talk about what happened, maybe brag to somebody about what he did, then we'll get the break we need. What do you think of findjodi.com? Honestly, I've never been to findjodi.com, sorry. So in all these years, she's also openly admitting she's never gone to the main website of the woman she worked with. She was the assistant for and who went missing. And she's basically doing a memorial at the river, allegedly, if she really did that. But she never, not a single time did she keep up with the website in all these years. Wow. I mean, this woman is blunt. You got to give her that, right? I mean, why would you even admit that? I mean, I don't know. It's weird. This whole interview is weird. Let me see if I could track down what she thinks happened. So yeah, these are very interesting statements. So I found this article here. So this is KCCI Des Moines, updated June 21st, 2022. So I don't know if that's when it was first published. Well, yeah. This weekend marks 27 years since Jodi Huisentruit disappeared. So this is KCCI News 8. A mystery in Mason City has gone unsolved for nearly 3 decades. This marks 27 years since the morning news anchor Jodi Huisentruit was last seen. KARE-TV reports the last person to speak to Huisentruit says she is still carrying a heavy burden. When Huisentruit didn't show up from work one morning, KIMT, her producer Amy Coons called and woke her. But when she still didn't show up, Coons called her again. That time there was no answer. Police found signs of a struggle outside Huizentrut's apartment. She lived just a mile from the station. Investigators believe she was abducted but have never named a suspect. There are a few clues as to what happened, but Coons has her own theories. Quote, "My gut says it was somebody she knew. Maybe 2 people she knew, question mark." Now that's curious. Because in most cases, people don't just jump to two assailants, to 2 perps. And I think the person thought, if I can't have her, nobody will, end quote, Coons said. When asked if Huisentruit will ever be found, Coons said she doesn't think so. Wow, so she is blunt. One way or another, she is blunt. And so apparently another coworker also thinks this. So I don't know if she's talking about Van Cees or possibly the stalker, but she said she wasn't worried about it. So seemingly she's saying she didn't. Yes, seemingly she's not pointing to the stalker, because she said she wasn't worried about it. She could have added maybe she should have been. Like, there could have been more clues given if Amy really thought it was the stalker. Whereas Van Cees, supposedly, if he lived in the building. So she's saying another coworker, but presumably not the other guy she was good friends with, also thinks it was somebody who was being possessive, but possibly 2 people. Why would it be 2 people? So did Van Cees find out that she was having this relationship with this other guy? He got jealous? Like, I don't know what these people are thinking. But again, they knew her. They were there. Sometimes gut instincts are true in these cases. Anybody here have any thoughts on all this? Like, you guys have all been listening pretty quiet compared to normally. Nobody's got anything so far? Let's go back to this book, Dead Air. So, again, it claims that Van Cees fixated on Jodi as soon as he moved into her apartment building and asked her neighbor who she was. He then was later seen watching her apart from his car after he had moved out, and now he's filming her birthday party, and then she's going to his house the day before she disappears to watch the video. So this also claims he had fist fights with Billy. Billy, the friend that passed away, there were rumors and suspicions about his death. The bartender she interviewed for the book told her that they had physical fights over Jodi, and that's a big red flag. No last name here. Let's see if I can find if he was ever publicly named. So I did find some more curiosity about Van Cees. So get this. This is kind of a mind shock. So apparently, reporters from Find Jodi organization said that they interviewed a bunch of people who knew Van Cees, and a lot of them said that he had a temper. And he named his boat after Jodi before she went missing. So she was, and apparently he was much older, so he would have been in his 50s. So that's a little interesting. So a guy in his 50s, so she's going to the house of a guy in his 50s who filmed her birthday party. This is kind of a weird relationship, isn't it? Other people are saying that he cooperated with police the entire time. I don't know. Supposedly, other people were saying that he didn't have any friends or any other interests that were obvious. Again, I don't know how much of this is true. These are what people are saying about him. So was if that's true, that is highly suspicious, right? He has no real friends, or presumably nobody that knows about any other friends or interests. He's obsessed with Jodi. He's naming his boat after Jodi before she went missing, so not as some kind of an honor to his friend. Who names their boat? Yeah, and how long had he even known her? Is this all less than a year? People supposedly said that they saw him watching her from the parking lot after he no longer lived at that apartment complex. So there was people who followed this case online saying there were early articles that theorized that Jodi was being stalked by an obsessed fan that saw her on TV. Which, again, that wouldn't be the first time that happened, right? A news anchor or somebody on a TV personality being stalked by a rando. Apparently, there was also an early interview where he referred to Jodi in the past tense, day one, when she had only been missing for a few hours. So that is a huge curiosity as well. So in the podcast Murder with My Husband, that's the name of the podcast, I don't know if they're talking, I don't know which PI they're talking about here. They said they can never cross off John Van Ceese's name. He said because he died, we'll likely never see justice because John took it to the grave with him. So I don't know if this is a different PI, but he really thinks that Van Ceese was the guy who harmed her. And he got super jealous. So that's kind of curious. So if she was at his, presumably she's at his home the day before watching the video of her birthday, perhaps that's when he really pushed for a relationship and she said no. If that's what happened. Just the timeline is interesting, though. The timeline is very, very interesting here. On the other hand, though, I mean, she is pretty. Like, there'd be no shortage of weirdos that were interested with her and possibly that would want to stalk her. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is tough. This is definitely tough. People that point it against being Van Ceese is that he knew her. So why would there, unless he snapped in a fit of rage, Or, so unless he snapped in a fit of rage, he could probably get her to his home. He could say, oh, he did a new edit of the birth, or whatever. If they were friendly, he wouldn't need to abduct her in the middle of a parking lot in front of all these potential witnesses, right? Unless she caught him stalking her, because presumably there were other witnesses who said that he would be sitting in the parking lot watching her or looking for her or whatever after he no longer lived there. If she caught him doing that, she might think that was kind of weird, right? She might have, yeah. And that could have facilitated the physical altercation. The other thing that's kind of weird, Amy believed that Jodi was alone. But what, again, if she wasn't alone, if her new boyfriend or whatever was over, what if the new boyfriend left and Van Cease or some other stalker is in the parking lot watching her, presumably in this van or whatever, if they see the boyfriend leaving and she's leaving shortly after, or if she's even walking out with the boyfriend gets into his car and leaves, she's getting into her car, and that's when he makes the move. I mean, how many different scenarios are there? But if he has a history of hanging around the parking lot of that apartment complex, I mean, that's kind of hard to ignore. That's kind of hard to ignore. Presumably, he told the police the day of that he was the last person to see her alive, and possibly referred to her in the past tense as if she's no longer alive. So we're about to get into the major mind shocks here that I'm going to round this episode out with, because in this book, Dead Air perhaps offers the best clues we have. And so let me just finish going through all of this in Dead Air, and then everybody can have their reactions here. But yeah, I don't know who this other Billy is. So there was a guy that had a strange death that supposedly Van Cease had gotten into fistfights, supposedly multiple physical fistfights over Jodi specifically. So that's a curiosity. So another point here, supposedly he had money. So he was a corn seed salesman. Beth, in the book here, goes into detail how not only he purchased an expensive boat, but he claimed he named after Jodi, which was estimated at $26,000. But he also had a couple of rental properties, including an empty home only a few blocks away from Jodi's apartment. So this is a summary by Extreme Ad on the Jodi Huisentruit case subreddit here. Extreme Ad posted all of this. When the author looked at his employment history, she found that he had worked at a previous ranch in Newton, Iowa that had connections to drugs and a suspicious double murder. When he moved to Mason City, interestingly enough, she found that he was taking his company vehicle to a car mechanic who was paying his rent to that drug lord who's been named in this case previously. What's even more interesting, she found there was another place that his company would have serviced his car for free, but he was deliberately going to this place. So, the name of the guy is Billy Pruin, by the way. So, yeah, this case has a lot of layers here. This case has a lot of layers. Huh. So Billy Pruin is the Billy. And there was a fatal shooting here. So Billy Pruin was shot later that summer. I'm assuming it's the same Billy. So Van Cease, also interesting, Van Cease did allegedly pass a lie detector test according to FindJodi.com. So, interesting. So Van Cease was a friend of Jodi's who claimed to be the last person to see her alive. He was interviewed by police early on in the investigation, denied he had anything to do with her disappearance, told reporters back in 95 that he passed the lie detector test. So that's what he told reporters. So we don't, again, so we might not know whether he passed or not. Huh. A lot of results of the executed warrants in this case have been sealed. Make of that what you will. So Billy died from a gunshot wound. Wait, it says 3 months before she went missing? That's weird. Other places are saying he went in 95. Oh, it was before. It was April 4th. Interesting. Interesting. So according to this author, he was getting into fistfights several months before she went missing. There were multiple fistfights here with Van Cease over Jodi. I mean, that's kind of weird if true. Weird if true. Welcome, Critter Mama here. Any thoughts on the case? The chat's really quiet on this case for some reason. So 3 months before she disappeared, Billy Pruin, an acquaintance of Jodi, so she knew him. It doesn't say the exact nature of the acquaintance, but apparently she knew him and Van Cease, so they all know each other. I mean, to completely dismiss that possible connection, that's kind of weird. So apparently there was a freak accident. So Don Sazma, a Minnesota-based PI hired by the Pruin family, tells FindJodi.com that his investigation concluded definitively that Pruin was the victim of an accidental firearm discharge. The death of Mr. Pruin was a freak accident, Sazma says in the latest episode of the Find Jodi podcast. What's weird, though, how do they know that for sure? Because Pruin's official manner of death was initially ruled suicide in 95, and then it has been changed to could not be determined. And this was a gunshot wound to the chest. Now, I assume that's not a standard mode of suicide, but even an accidental discharge, so this was April 4th, 95, before midnight, supposedly. So how do they know somebody else wasn't present there, or that a gun hadn't been... It says an accidental discharge? Like, how would they know? How did they know he was alone? I don't know. So he was shot at his home. So there's this... So John Van Cease supposedly had multiple fistfights with this man. So, and there's also rumors he was involved in the drug trade. Again, supposedly unsubstantiated. But supposedly Van Cease has some connections, and he knew both Van Cease and Jodi. I mean, it's so hard to rule all of this out. So, yeah, that's a curiosity. That is a curiosity. So the author, Bednar, also stated that there might have been ties to Gerald Best's December 99 murder and also the Copper Dollar Ranch murders of 17-year-old Melissa Gregory and Stephen Fisher, 20, in March 83, which is weird. I mean, so this would have to be, if this was some kind of drug-related thing with serial killers, I mean, that's the only way any of this could possibly be connected, right? IowaColdCases.org has a case summary here. Let me go over this. So, William Thomas Billy Pruitt, 43, was shot at his rural Mason City, Iowa home Tuesday, April 4th, 95. 2 days before his death, he'd proposed to his girlfriend, Gretchen Tussler. Officials initially ruled his death a suicide, but later changed his status to undetermined. KIMT TV morning and noon anchor Jodi Huisentruit was allegedly investigating Pruitt's death when she went missing nearly 3 months later, June 27th, 95. Huizentrout's body has never been recovered. Her case also remains unsolved. So this, I don't know if this was ever fully substantiated, but it would explain if the FBI was interested. I wonder what other information the FBI had on some of these other cases. And if there is drug overlap here, I mean, that kind of opens the door to all sorts of unsavory individuals, does it not? Evidence suggests intruder scuffle. The day of his death, Pruitt drove his pickup to Mason. And that would also explain why that representative said that this was a mass cover-up, because once you start getting into the drug trade, if you go high enough, there's no shortage of cases where law enforcement and government officials are involved. Again, I'm not saying that happened in this case, but to hallucinate and spam appeal to incredulity, logical fallacies, ignoring all of history is quite silly here. The day of his death, Pruitt drove his pickup to Mason City to pick up a new tractor he had purchased from Brake Implement. That's 2 Ks. Pruitt left his pickup at the dealership and drove the new tractor to his rural Mason City home. Calls to Pruitt that night went unanswered. So here's another curiosity, right? Whenever something is out of the ordinary, like, you have to consider it. So this isn't a random day where it's just a routine. He goes home, he ends up shot. How often does somebody buy a new tractor and leave their car at the dealer? There's some kind of weird connection here. Calls to his home that night went unanswered. A friend stopped by Pruitt's home the following day, found the door open about 4 inches, the keys still in the outside lock. After calling out to Pruitt and getting no response, the friend listened. This definitely does not seem like a suicide. Why would they rule it that? Like, none of this points to it. Like, you get a brand new tractor, you leave your keys in the door? I mean, that's just kind of weird. Pruitt's mother went to check on him. And who was the friend, by the way? It's not named here. That would be crazy if it was Van C's. Pruitt's mother went to check on him Thursday, found her... I mean, I would assume that would have been reported if it was, so it's probably not. After calling out to Pruitt and getting no response, the friend left. And that's kind of weird, too. You see... So here, hold on a second. If you're a friend, you go to your friend's house that doesn't pick up the phone or whatever, you routinely stop by his home. You see the door open 4 inches, the key's still in the outside lock, and you leave? What? Or is that just an explanation that this so-called friend who's not a friend came up with just in case their DNA is found? Critter Mama says, this is my first time hearing about the case. Yeah, you might want to start at the beginning. This one's a doozy. This one is a doozy. Critter Mama says, I use my tractor as a car. That's very cool. That is very cool. But this guy drove his car to the dealer, left it there as he's buying the tractor. So, yeah, this friend just leaves after seeing the door open 4 inches with the keys still on the outside lock. Pruitt's mother went to check on him Thursday, found her son dead in the dining room, a gunshot wound to his chest, Nearby lay a spent .44 Magnum slug from Pruitt's gun. According to FindJodi.com, article published May 9, 2006 by KAL's Gary Peterson, a Cerro Gordo County Sheriff's report stated that there were no identifiable prints on the revolver Pruitt reportedly had in his hand. His hands were placed in paper bags, the report stated, but there was no record of any gunshot residue on either hand or on any of Pruitt's clothing. What kind of an idiot would immediately think this is suicide? This is weird. Pruitt's fiance said he was, quote, afraid of something, end quote, several weeks before his death, Peterson said. I wonder, so this guy who knows Jodi, a reporter, news anchor, who also knows Van Cease, who's supposedly involved in some shady activities we'll get back to in a moment, they all know this guy Billy, who Van Cease has supposedly had multiple fistfights over Jodi with, and this guy's afraid of something. Jodi says she's being watched or stalked. What is going on here? But Van Cease is the only guy to come out of this unscathed. That's a curiosity out of this triangle of people who know each other. But how did PIs conclude it was a freak accident? How could it be? Why would he have his hands in paper bags? What? Okay, before writing his May 2006 report, Peterson said he'd sat down with Laney Good, one of the people who knew both Jodi and Bill. Good believes, Peterson wrote, that Pruitt was in a hurry to get into his house. He left his keys in the outside lock of the door, crossed the kitchen, and entered the dining room getting his revolver. Somehow his revolver discharged, and Good believes there was a struggle and Pruitt was shot. In her book, Dead Air, The Disappearance of Jodi Huisentruit, author Beth Bednar also cited possible connections between Pruitt's deaths and Huisentruit's disappearance. In a December 2nd, 2011 phone interview with Iowa Cold Cases' Jodi Ewing, Bednar said that Huisentruit's 95 disappearance and Pruitt's death possibly have ties to Gerald Best's 1999 murder, as well as the brutal Copper Dollar Ranch murders of March 83. And yeah, maybe in the next episode I'll go over those cases to see if there's a connection here. On February 20th, 2015, a Black Hawk County jury found Fisher's estranged wife. So the murders of 17-year-old Melissa Gregory and Stephen Fisher, 20 years old, in March 83. So that's over a decade prior. A Black Hawk County jury found Fisher's estranged wife, Teresa Terry Supino, not guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder in the Gregory Fisher double homicide. Pruitt's cause of death remains officially listed as undetermined, although the lack of gunshot residue on his hands and clothing suggests he neither pulled the trigger on the .44 mag nor fired the fatal shot. So yeah, not a ton of info here, but let's get back to Beth Bednar here in her book. So when he moved to Mason City, so yeah, he's taking a company vehicle to a car mechanic who is paying his rent to the drug lord. So I don't know what drug lord they're mentioning here. So this is supposedly this is Dustin Honkin. Honkin was convicted of running a major drug trafficking ring out of Mason City, Iowa in the 90s and was executed by federal authorities in 2020 for the brutal murders of 5 people, including 2 young children. The informant claim, an accomplice and former girlfriend of Honkin's, Angela Johnson, claimed while in prison Honkin possessed direct knowledge of who abducted Huisentruit. So that's interesting. So the claim is not that he was personally responsible. He either ordered it or knew about it. Honkin was living and operating his illegal meth operation in Mason City at the exact time Huisentruit went missing in June 95. So Huisentruit covered local crime stories. A theory suggested she may have been digging into the local drug ring or a related mysterious death, specifically that of a man named Billy Prune, which might have made her a target. Interesting. I mean, this case is absolutely incredible. I didn't know it was this deep. I did not know it was this deep. Nobody has any thoughts, really? I mean, we got a number of people in here. Nobody has any thoughts at all. This is the quietest the chat, I think, has ever been. So again, if this is true, the car mechanic is paying rent to Honkin, drug lord, serial killer. Now, apparently, his company could have serviced his car for free, but he went to this other mechanic instead. A friend claimed that he walked with her the morning of the abduction. It turns out, according to the author, she says in the book that he canceled on her last minute. That's not what she told the Oxygen documentary series as well as 48 Hours. The author says this friend, some people say to be believed to have moved with him to Arizona later on and was romantically linked to him. Birthday party claim. This one is very explosive. According to the author, one of Jodi's friends told her that the night of her birthday party, her friend Ani, who in the 48 Hours segment, the friend took her keys by accident and Jodi was stranded. Apparently, Jodi spent the night at John's apartment sleeping on the couch. She supposedly later confided in one of her friends that he attempted to date rape her that evening. This has never been reported before, but boy does it change everything if true. She wouldn't have gone to his place to watch the video if true. Okay, so if this bombshell claim by Ani is true, that changes everything. Because now, if Van Cease attempted to attack her or assault her in any way, is he thinking she went to the police? Was she stranded? So she's stranded at his place and she's staying there that night? Does that mean that Amy lied about speaking to her at her apartment? I don't know. The plot has certainly thickened here. I don't know what to make of all of this. Welcome, Jeff U1P. I mean, we're just wrapping up here now. We're almost going 2 hours in this deep dive. I'm definitely going to be doing an episode 2. But these are mind-shocking revelations here. Give me 1 second here. I want to track something down. So what's curious here is that Ani, or Annie, I don't know if that was like a typo, apparently she's close friends with Jodi. They said they went water skiing with Van Cease on his boat. So she only in the, so is it only in the book that it's mentioned, this rumor is mentioned, and she doesn't? I wonder if the FBI told her not to say that in interviews, in public interviews, and the author dug deeper, because we really don't know. In a lot of these cases, that's what happens, and that's kind of what accounts for deferring statements. User since deleted on Reddit said this: here's what I think happened. Jodi's friend was pointing out people involved in drugs locally to protect her because she was a little naive. One of these was an associate of Van Cease, who, by the way, do corn seed salesmen really afford boats? Beth Bednar wrote how the friend, Jodi and Van Cease, had boating parties together. Van Cease has the friend taken out over overhearing said conversation. I'm assuming this is Billy. So Van Cease talks Arizona up and tries to get Jodi interested in a move there. Jodi's journal has mentions of Arizona. She starts receiving disturbing phone calls. Maybe as a helpful push to make the decision to move. Was the last night Jodi was seen alive the last attempt to convince her to move to Arizona with him? She was supposedly going to change her number and report the calls the following day after golf. Wait, hold on a second. So not only does she mention being followed by a white van, if it was the white van, stories could have gotten conflated, but she's said she was being stalked. And she's also receiving phone calls, and people are saying there's a white van watching her, but then Van Cease is also watching her, presumably not in a white van, but in his personal vehicle, in the apartment parking lot where he no longer lives. And he's that loaded, he has all these real estate properties and a boat? We may never know. It's time to bring Angela Johnson and ask her about Van Cease and his role in the drug rings. Who was in Honkin's CCE with her that he did the killings? She knows. So this is his ex-girlfriend or informant, whatever, Angela Johnson. She just isn't a public push for it. And by the way, who was receiving the drugs and not paying for them? Same person who was the last to see one of the victims alive. Is this Van Cease? Angela doesn't know why in their murderous rampage they spared a freeloader's life. Yeah, the more I look at this, like, is it really possible Billy Pruin, just coincidentally, who knows both Jodi and Van Cease, supposedly has fistfights over Jodi with Van Cease, just dies coincidentally, and it has nothing to do with anything? Jeff U1P says the salesman in the field probably wouldn't make enough for boats. Well, not just boats, but multiple real estate properties, including an empty house not far from that apartment complex that Jodi was taken from. The mix-up of the keys sounds sus to me. Most key holders and keys don't even look the same. The weight varies. Yeah, especially with women, right? Like, they always have those like distinct keychains and all that. Yeah, I don't know. This is very weird. This is far more perplexing and layered than I ever would have thought. So the more I look at this the drug issue, supposedly Mason City was this major drug corridor. And there's a whole bunch of serial killers and drug runners connected to this drug corridor, which opens the door to just so many people. And so if Van Cease didn't do it, it sure looks like he was in the middle of something regardless, doesn't it? Maybe that's why he was so forthcoming with the Popo, because he knows he didn't do it. Perhaps he knows who did, though. Emotional Code here on True Crime Discussion subreddit says Van Cease was the much older dude who infiltrated himself into her social group, I believe, after meeting at a club. He was smitten, and so much so he named his boat after her. Friends warned he wanted more of a relationship, but she claimed he was harmless and continued to allow him to join their gatherings, in which he often footed the bill, even arranging their activities. So not only does he have a boat, not only does he have multiple real estate properties, but he's just paying for everybody all the time? How loaded is this guy? And is it possible he's not involved with drugs? On a crime news show he was interviewed, apparently be excited to be talking about her. He had a mad crush for sure, but I thought he was a bit nerdy and immature, going through a midlife crisis, excitable, having young, beautiful friends in addition to his obsession, but not a murderer. So that is a post from Emotional Code. I don't know. It seems like he was really involved in something, even if he's not responsible for what happened to her. Another interesting comment here by CMT50. The producer would have had to hire someone or have help. Wasn't she, the producer, the one that had to do the early show when Jodi didn't show up? The producer said she was annoyed at having to do the show. And I think that this is a response to a comment that has been removed. I'm assuming the comment is saying that something happened at the news station. Let me see if I can recover it. I'm still trying to get it. But so I think it's possible there seems to be some kind of an overlap between what's going on at work and Van Cease and the circle of drug people and Billy Pruin. To believe that this is all coincidental, I mean, you just have to be such a devout coincidence theorist. Like, I don't know if I'm that much of a coincidence theorist. That's just, yeah, that's crazy. Okay, I got the comment here. Might Jodi Huisentruit's producer have wanted her dead? Seems like a red herring alibi and making to say the person called her at home and asked her why she wasn't at work yet. At which time Huisentruit reported said Jodi was running late and would be there shortly. When the police were called when she didn't show up, that's not normal. Who calls the police if an employee doesn't show up for work? Someone who perpetrated the murder and doesn't want to look like a suspect. What murderer reports concern to look like he was not involved but is just caring and worried about who didn't show up because he or she was suspected? Are you kidding? Okay, so they're alleging that the producer might have wanted her dead. Yeah, I don't know about that, but it seems like there was something going on at work and there's some kind of overlap with this Van Cease guy and his friends and Billy Pruin. And I also think I don't know if I can buy that there's no connection at all to the work situation. She's a reporter, anchor, whatever. I mean, that puts a real target on her back. She's involved with a news station. Yeah, Jeff UNP says, perhaps I might first start from the beginning. Okay, yeah. I mean, Critter Mama says, think they were trafficking girls. Wait, hold on a second. I missed a few statements here. Jeff UNP says, these are purchases a drug dealer would definitely buy. Boat hangars, properties with the water, unsuspicious drug transports, could be a large operation. Definitely a reason to whack someone about the street. Well, there's also the story supposedly that this guy tried to force himself upon Jodi. In which case that would be motive. And if she didn't have her keys and she was staying the night over the previous night, again, all of this seems fishy, especially this producer's story that she spoke to Jodi. How do we verify that? All of this is fishy. Jeff UNP says, money is the main motive of murder. If love, hate, accidents, or boredoms and rituals are out of the question, the drug angle will be the most... I think there's overlap here, actually, right? Because if this guy is involved in drug issues, maybe he's even supplying Jodi. Maybe he's supplying other people at the station. They're, news, like the main news anchor, some of these producers, they have money. And, yeah, the young people, parties, etc. And if he's got ties to this major drug lord who's also a serial killer, who supposedly said he knows what happened to her, whether he ordered it himself or not. I just wonder, How could all of this be coincidental? And if this guy tried to force himself upon her, and this guy has a history of stalking her supposedly. So yeah, I mean, we kind of went over a lot. I'm definitely going to be doing a follow-up episode here because there's so much more to go over. Now, whether Van Cees did this or not, I'm not sure it's possible. I don't know if it's possible he's completely uninvolved in anything. And the Billy Pruin situation, this guy got killed just a few months prior. And was also, apparently, according to his fiancée, concerned for safety in the weeks leading up to his death. And he also knows Van Cees. I mean, this is too many coincidences. Again, I'm not saying any of these people are responsible for what happened to Jodi, but to think it's all unrelated, that kind of a coincidence stack? What kind of goof would dismiss all of this? I mean, this is wild. So, also somebody mentions here in the 2020 special in 2023, a neighbor heard a guy pounding on her door. And this is also mentioned in the book. That morning? Was it that morning? In the book, it also states that there was blood and makeup smeared on the car, but nowhere else is that stated. Someone asked here, I can't see the benefit, why the friend he walked with would lie about it all of these years. What would be in it for her to lie? Northern Sky here with the post on the official Jodi Huisentruit case subreddit, or not official, whatever, just Jodi Huisentruit case. I tend to think she stumbled into defending Van Cees because he was her friend. And then she kept going over the years from testifying before grand jury to a moment on Up and Vanished where she won't budge even slightly on her timeline, which contradicts other accounts of that morning, and instead she accuses someone else of being obsessed with Jodi and killing her. When the case heated up again as a result of the 2017 search warrant and subpoena, she went public with her story in 48 Hours, the Frozen Truth podcast, and Up and Vanished in 2018, 2019, and 2020, respectively. So this is Van Cees's friend, who she did walks with, and then apparently there's a changed story on whether or not this walk was canceled or not. What's curious, though, even if it wasn't canceled, did they walk by the apartment? Like, what was the route of the walk? And did he see a man leaving Jodi's apartment, and then after the walk he came back and confronted Jodi about it? I mean, I don't know. But again, with this changing story, we need a brain fingerprint scan for this friend. In the Frozen Truth episode, she said she decided to go public with her story because she said maybe if people heard it, they would think twice about Van Cees being involved. What I question is why the morning of June 27th was the day that their morning walk did not take place in their usual location where it could have been corroborated. She says it was because Van Cees was tired from having Jodi over to watch the birthday party the night before, and it got late and they would have been drinking. And when she talked to Van Cees around 6 a.m. that morning, he was groggy, hadn't had his coffee yet, and he asked her to meet him at his house. This contradicts Van Cees's own account of the birthday party viewing, which one interview is described as a short video, but a short visit, but apparently he also gave a range of times in other interviews. It also begs the question of why no other late nights through their morning walk off its usual meetup, because Van Cees was known to go to local bars at night and apparently get into fistfights over Jodi with a guy that ended up dead. I would love to know, but we'll probably never get to know the precise time that Van Cees showed up at the crime scene at the Key Apartments parking lot that morning. It would possibly reveal some other contradictions with the morning walk timeline or not. It would be a data point that could help either way. But I just don't trust her account. As I've mentioned other times, Scott Fuller is pretty brilliant in interviewing people. He has a level of humanity that you don't find with many interviewers. He has said he has no reason to doubt her story, and I have every reason when I listen to it to doubt it. Call it women's intuition if that's still a thing. I'm not an unkind person. I think it may have been a case of loneliness on the part of the morning walk partner. She had this new friend, a new guy in town. She was going to stand by him. And of course, I could be totally wrong. And here's another question. How does this person end up being friends with Van Cease, possibly a guy who's loaded and involved in the drug business, who had another friend slash acquaintance end up dead mere months prior? So is he supplying this woman with drugs? And if she's, again, I'm not claiming this is true in any way. I do not claim anything is true and true. But if he's her drug connect, especially if he's letting her have some for free, of course she's going to stand by him, right? Some responses here. I could see that too. I heard they hadn't actually been taking their morning walk in something like at least a month, but all of a sudden on that day, they not only walked, supposedly, but in a location they hadn't usually. That's interesting. I have my doubts about the whole Jodi and Van Cease birthday watching tape situation on that Monday night at his place. I heard that John Van Cease went to some bar, may have been the local one he frequented earlier that day, and he was telling people or someone that he had finally had the tape and planned to watch it with Jodi. He had just spent the weekend with Jodi prior during the water ski trip. He also probably knew Jodi's plans to be out of town for a wedding in Minnesota that upcoming weekend. In my opinion, I think it's possible Van Cease had expectations that night on the 26th. He had the tape and wanted to watch it with Jodi before the end of the week when she'd be out of town, and who knows how long he'd have to wait when they would watch it, if ever. Jodi was a young socialite from all accounts. I don't think Van Cease wanted her going to that wedding and maybe meeting someone before she got to see all that he had done for her during the party planning. He now had evidence of it on film. Van Cease bangs on Jodi's apartment door, and he's the one neighbor who's supposedly heard saying, quote, "I know you're in there," end quote. If that's true, that's pretty crazy. So there's supposedly a neighbor witness that there's a man banging on her door. Is it that morning saying, "I know you're in there"? Other people are saying they doubt the birthday tape viewing ever happened. So was this the day before where he's banging on her door? I mean, this is kind of weird. If this can't even be corroborated. Jeff UNP says, changing routines is always sus, especially when after your bar fight people end up dead. Yeah, it's weird. Jeff UMP says, if he is the kingpin over there, he probably knows at least what went down. Yeah, if it was connected to that, yes, he would. So this, yeah, I mean, this is all really weird. So this guy was executed already, but I wonder, I'm sure they asked him about it. I guess he denied it, but perhaps they should have offered some kind of deal, right? Why didn't they do that if he really, I mean, unless they thought he would lie, but if he could corroborate with evidence. So here's some more information here. This is from P. Sheldon, who is possibly, if this is the same P. Sheldon on the Maura Murray MindShock subreddit, this is a very, oh yes, it looks like it is, very astute online sleuth, who also knows a lot about this case. That's what I'm thinking, that the birthday tape viewing never happened. In my opinion, I think Van Cease built up this huge desire to have Jodi watch the tape with him, and that desire grew increasingly larger the second he had the tape in hand. He probably was anticipating Jodi being equally enthusiastic to watch it as he was, but maybe he called her and she said she either didn't have time or didn't feel like watching the birthday tape, and that enraged Van Cease enough to drive to the Key Apartments, knock or bang on Jodi's door. Who knows what happened after? Jodi had just spent the entire weekend with Van Cease, sleeping at his son's place for the water ski trip and then going bar hopping after. I doubt she was enthused enough after a day's work and the golf outing to want to watch a video with Van Cease of the birthday party he threw for her weeks prior. A little creepy, in my opinion. Jodi seemed to be in a completely different place emotionally than he was. Her last diary entry showed she was thinking about her career and moving on. I think Van Cease was catching on to this, and it was sinking in that Jodi had plans to move on in life and leave Mason City behind, which also meant leaving Van Cease behind as well. So that's curious. Is that not curious? Wow. I mean, is there any so we have a few issues here. Is there irrefutable evidence that her producer slash assistant Amy ever talked to her that morning? Do we have irrefutable evidence that this birthday tape viewing ever took place the day before? So it looks like Van Cease is the only person that is there. I'm trying to find here. It looks like there is no evidence. There are no other witness that corroborated that she went to his home to view the tape. And I wonder if he said that. I wonder if he said that to explain away any possible DNA. But that opens the door. That opens the door. So let me go through another article here real quick. KARE11.com. Huisentruit evidence released to the Oxygen Show. We'll go over all of this more in episode 2 because this is going to end up being a series. We got so much information to go over here. So this was posted February 16th, 2020 by Lou Regus. So, in the Up and Vanished, a group of on-camera producers call retired FBI profiler Jim Clemente, which we've gone over in a few cases, whom they say did his own investigation years ago and showed it to the Mason City Police Department. Clemente told producers he and other renowned profilers John Douglas and James Fitzgerald watched the video and noticed Jodi's friend John Van Cease. Every time Jodi would dance or spend time with another guy, John would have laser focus on Jodi and whoever she was talking to. He had a really evil look in his eyes, like he was really pissed off. Clemente said, let me repeat that again. This is Clemente giving an official quote here. Think about how crazy this is. He had a really evil look in his eyes, like he was really pissed off. Clemente went on to add, I actually put together a prosecutor report in which I built the case for Van Cease having committed this crime. Van Cease was questioned several times by police but was never arrested, never charged. Van Cease has long said he showed Jodi the birthday party video at his house the night before she disappeared, potentially making him the last person to see her alive. Woodford is Van Cease's alibi from the morning Jodi disappeared, and she has been publicly defending him in recent years. She says she went for a walk with Van Cease from 6:45 to 7:45 a.m. shortly after Jodi disappeared. That's very convenient timing, too, right? The Up and Vanish show attacked Woodford's story and timeline, which Woodford has told under oath to a grand jury. I haven't changed my story. The reason why is I'm not lying, Woodford said. Woodford says programs that concentrate on Van Cease don't get us any closer to the truth. They weren't really doing something for the good of Jodi to find her, Woodford said. So, okay. KAR11 News reached out to John Van Cease and his wife Jane, and they gave this statement. Once the identities of the guilty parties are exposed from behind the veil of obscurity they are hiding behind, we will sit alongside Jodi's family at their sentencing, end quote. It's also curious they say guilty parties, plural. How would they know there's more than one party? Van Cees and his wife gave the statement once the identities, plural, of the guilty parties, plural, and that's an interesting phrasing, exposed from behind the veil of obscurity. Who talks like that? I mean, this is all very, very weird. And supposedly Woodford did change her story according to this book. So we have some irregularities here. Yeah, I'm going to go through all the micro expressions and the testimonies in episode 2 here. So apparently the police interviewed them at 9 a.m. and they said they heard, so it was more than one person said they heard a woman screaming that morning, so. So this was a 73-unit apartment complex, so there would be somewhere between 100 and 150 people there. And there were several people who reported the scream. Rose Tobin, the apartment manager, was sleeping. She awoke to a scream followed by the sound of a car engine revving and tires squealing. Keith and Betty Walsh were also asleep, awoke to a woman yelling for help. They thought it came from someone playing in the park because the voice sounded surprised, not frightened. Their apartment was close to the park. They often heard loud noises from the park at all hours of the night, so it was easily dismissed. Vic Konigsberg was awake and cleaning his apartment when he heard a woman screaming, which he says lasted for about 1 minute. He says he thought it was something going on in the apartment above. A minute is a long time for screaming, because if somebody screams for like a second, okay, they could have been surprised. There could be people joking around. Sustained screaming for a minute? Did this guy not call the popo? And the other people are being awakened, so, you know, they'd be groggy. It's a little tough, but there was at least one guy who was fully awake who heard screaming for close to a minute. I mean, there was also a lot of shady individuals in the area as well. So that's, that's tough. Because the other thing that's tough, presumably, if they did execute, I don't know if they executed a warrant on Van Cees or if they did any testing on his apartment initially on, but if he's claiming, so nobody has corroborated that Jodi had been at his home watching the birthday party footage the day before. If he made that story up to explain away her DNA, I could explain things, especially if he took her there. Would he take her there if he did kidnap her at the parking lot? Would he take her to his home? I don't know. And then somewhere else? I don't know. All of this is just very, very tough. And the drug connections. So there's a few very curious things we got to go over real quick before I round this out. I was going to end this a while ago, but there's just so many details we have to go over here. Jeff UNP says, I think all the witnesses are useless. The Ant One says, I've been a bit silent because I'm catching up, but last I checked on the case, it is theorized John was obsessed with Jodi and he was the last person to see her before the disappearance. Jeff UNP says, sounds like corroborating each other's stories. There's a lot of everything going on here. I can't. All right, let me just go over a couple more things and then we'll catch up on this in episode 2. So, okay, hold on one second here. This is on the Unsolved Mysteries subreddit. So some people think her best friend's husband did it. This is the Minnesota property that was searched. So this is the property in Winstead, Minnesota that apparently was searched at least twice with the home demolished and then searched again. So her best friend's husband supposedly was also obsessed with Jodi. And supposedly he did own the type of van that was seen speeding out of Jodi's apartment complex. This is what I brought up in the beginning. So this van here, you'd have to double check all of these individuals. So if her best friend's husband really owned the van, so I see Purchase in the subreddit here stated, I agree with you, the Minnesota connection is significant. The PI previously stated he doesn't believe Van Cease did it, which I think is what the average person thinks. The only thing would be that Steve Ridge said this person was investigated early on, and when I watched the documentary, I don't believe the friend's ex-husband was. I think that's a newer connection, but I could be wrong. So if it's not the friend's ex, then more likely it's someone that has not been publicly named, but was investigated early on by the police. So maybe it's a name public has never heard, but people close to her may know who he's talking about. I hope they eventually say, but even if they don't publicly share it, I hope they let the family in on it so they at least have an idea of what happened. It has to be torture not knowing. But it's definitely someone connected to Minnesota from what Ridge has said. Now here's another mind shocker here. So presumably, and we'll go over the birthday party footage that has been released, if her best friend from Minnesota is in town for the birthday party, right? And her husband is with her at that time. So we can examine that as well in episode 2. But here's another post that's curious. Moonstar says, I am stuck on the raised toilet seat, indicating a male visitor the prior night, and 2 wine glasses near the kitchen sink, a detail I have never heard in the past. Jodi was supposedly at Van Cease's home watching the recorded video of her birthday party. So she leaves there and then sees a man at her apartment, question mark? Also, even though Jodi was hurrying because she overslept, wouldn't she have gone to the bathroom, and even so, she would have noticed the raised toilet seat? Why not take 1 second to flip it down? And again, I keep going back to Amy, her producer, saying she believes that she was alone. Why would she believe Jodi was alone? Like, how would she know either way? I'm not saying she should believe that she wasn't alone. It's just something weird to say. I wonder if there's a connection between her work associates, something going on at work, and what happened. And possibly Van Cease. Even if he didn't do anything to her, he might still be connected. Man, what a bizarre case. I'm still trying to I don't think this is all coincidence. I'm just not a coincidence theorist. What can I say? I'm not a coincidence theorist. Something's just majorly off here with a lot of connections. So if there's 2 wine glasses and the toilet seat is up, what does that mean? Male visitor? Jeff UNP says that morning walk sounds like making sure people saw you, so alibi. Critter Mama says, I'm not buying they took the wrong keys thing. So, okay, if there's another female involved here, I wonder if, yeah, if there's another female involved, did they set her up for something? Because you have multiple people saying that there's multiple parties. Is that also kind of strange? Because Amy, the producer slash assistant, says there could be 2 people involved. Then you have one of the primary persons of interest, possibly the last guy to see her alive, Van Cease, and his wife making the statement when they get the parties, plural, responsible. You have multiple people. You have people from 2 different circles of her life. You have a work colleague and her friend. They're both making the statement that there's more than one person involved. Does anybody find that? Why would you say that? If you think it's a stalker, whoever, why would you say it's more than one? I mean, this is a very curious case. This is curious. I'm not sure if I've ever seen any other case where a woman goes missing, it's theorized it could have been somebody obsessed with her, and people in different circles are all saying it's more than one party involved. That's just weird. That's just weird. It's almost like they could possibly be connected. These circles could have some overlap, and people know something. There is a possible other explanation for the toilet seat being up. Some people say if she got really drunk the night before and she was throwing up in the toilet. I didn't think of that because I don't get blackout drunk and throw up. So, yes, that is an interesting detail. But the 2 glasses... Let me see if that detail is true. So there were 2 glasses on the countertop next to the kitchen sink. Huh. So, you know what's curious though? So apparently they could not get DNA extracted properly from the glasses. I don't know exactly the case there. But... because if you just take the raised toilet seat by itself or the 2 glasses by itself, because if she didn't do the dishes, let's look at the apartment footage. Okay, this is the last thing we're going to go over. I know I kept saying I'm going to end this. It's just such a curious case. There is a video of a walkthrough of her apartment here, and she does look a little messy. Guess this was on 48 hours, so let's look at this. Fair use, obviously, here. I mean, not that messy.
I was just headed out to work.
Shout out Video Home Systems. Where are the 2 wine? I don't see them. Where are the 2 wine glasses? Cans there. I don't really see them here. But So one of them has lipstick on him and one of them doesn't. So that's the counter to the people saying, oh, she just didn't have time to watch them. So we have, and in the bathroom here, they intentionally don't show the toilet for some reason.
Might not know what's going on. This is clearly a very active young woman, as everyone is.
I don't know if it's intentional that they clipped it out, but they don't show the toilet seat.
As everyone has
But it is a verified detail that the toilet seat was up.
told us.
Yeah, it's actually not that messy. So yeah, she probably wouldn't have just left the glasses there. But we have 3 points of evidence here. The toilet seat is up. There's 2 wine glasses, but only one of them has lipstick on it. Which again, for the people saying, okay, well, she could have drank the other one before she put lipstick on. Maybe, I guess. Critter Mama says, all right, hold on, let me just catch up with the comments here. But we're on 2.5 hours here for episode 1. I mean, kind of par for the course for a MINDSHOCK deep dive, but because there's just so much to go over here. The Ant One says there was another suspect whose names escape me that either owed or borrowed or rented that white van, who was also obsessed with Jodi and had the back of the van made into like a sex dungeon. Wow. I'll track that down for the next episode. Jeff UNP says, to set someone up in a missing murder of a woman's witness story would be more believable. Also think the girlfriend is lying. Yeah, that wasn't, well, which girlfriend? Because I think that's his friend. And then his wife, later on, his wife, that's a different person. The Ant One says, unless I'm misremembering or it's involved with a different case, but I'm sure it was related last time I looked at the case, might need a refresher after this podcast. Oh, you mean the van that looks like a sex dungeon? I haven't seen that cited here, but Critter Mama says, I guess my thought is the girl got her there and the wrong key thing, money or drugs or both. Her friend might also be jealous. Jeff UNP says, if I have the power to whack you after a fight, I wouldn't whack a lady myself. Jeff UNP says, toilet seat is proof of a man, definitely. Unless she was that ill and vomiting, but I don't think there was evidence of vomit, so yeah. Jeff UNP says, most women feel annoyed, irritated, would have put it back down right the instant they see it. Unless she's a junkie. Jeff UNP says her house doesn't seem like a procrastinating person. Yeah, not that messy, actually. Jeff UNP says the wine glasses is definitely proof of a man, together with the seat, if you ask me, or it was done on purpose. Presumably also, I keep going back to Amy here, her producer slash assistant or whatever, who said she believes Amy was alone, but she believes she was harmed by possibly 2 people. And also the last person. So what's curious in this case, we don't have verification that the person claimed to have spoke to her last actually did, and we don't have verification that the person presumed to have seen her last the night before actually saw her last and she was there. Isn't that curious? So both the last audio contact and the last visual contact are both unconfirmed in this case, and both these individuals claim there's more than one party responsible. And yet, Amy also claimed she believes that she was alone. You would think she would know the details about the glasses in the toilet seat. Something doesn't add up with both Van C's and her producer. It just doesn't add up. There's a missing piece here. Jeff UNP says, Mama is right. Sounds a bit like a setup. Indeed. Yeah. There's something off here. And it might not be the male jealousy. Perhaps it was female jealousy. But the overlapping potential drug situation doesn't make any sense. And the other acquaintance Billy, who ends up dead a few months prior, doesn't make any sense. So, yeah. Anyway, that's a wrap for episode 1. So, yeah, definitely a case that deserves the mind shock treatment with looking at all of this. And obviously, justice delayed is justice denied. If you want to help support the Mind Shock podcast, help keep up awareness in missing persons cases, cold cases, unsolved cases, wrongful convictions, and more, you can donate to our PayPal. Check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.